that's.
And you know, I remember when I first saw this, and I still see this connection. Every time I look at it, I think of Brancusi sculpture. I think of the way, say, you know, museums would display modern sculpture, you know, in sort of dioramas that look something like
Well,
this.
what I really liked about it was sort of the completely kind of non-food. I mean, the last thing it is about food.
Well, the bananas look like
it is
jewelry.
food, but
I mean,
yeah, So I kind of like enjoyed that aspect of it, that it was almost sort of like a machine of some sort. That was it just had a very kind of mechanical kind of construct that kind of. And so it was really the same experience as the Tongan artifacts. It really was kind of like after the fact, going through the negatives and just kind of suddenly kind of going, you know, that is kind of interesting, and you know.
And so you went to the darkroom and printed it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, were these shot in Italy?
These are both in Italy.
Yeah. It's interesting how when you're in a place, your artwork starts to look like the old master painting from the place, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, even the thing with the still life and that whole bit, I mean, I had become friends with this great realist painter, you know, Amy Weisskopf.
Amy Weisskopf.
Yeah, and I think kind of one of the things that I was kind of, one of the things I saw with Amy and her kind of painting sensibility was just this whole idea of like actually painting still life in a studio, and you know, kind of building your construct and kind of creating your environment and stuff like that. And I think that going from, say, something like the hat boxes or the brooms, and going from that sort of found kind of construct to a contrived, you know, situation, was sort of a challenging and kind of interesting kind of prospect for me. And I think that one of the things that I tried to do with these photographs technically was kind of, I don't know, kind of inform you of the objects first, and then the kind of the fact that it's a photograph second. I mean, I think that was sort of like the kind of thing. But yeah, that was the uova was a total Caravaggio thing. I mean, it was like right there on the money that I was spending every day.
Were you looking at Caravaggio paintings in the museum?
I was looking at them in the museum, but that painting, you know, of the bowl of grapes is right. It was right on the. It was on the 1,000 lira note, you know. And so I'm just saying, you know, that's it. And then Uva Uova was just sort of a little tongue twister, a little you know, Italian. I was trying to learn my Italian, and that's the only reason for those things to be together.
And then
sort of
the other one.
And that is just sort of, you know,
Bosco.
as you're kind of eating kind of panna cotta with, you know, frutti di bosco is just, you know, fruit of the woods, and that's how they serve that dessert. And so I was just doing my own little kind of simple little, and it, you know, that was photographed in a box. That is sort of a shadow box situation.
Okay, so that was actually your precursor to the box series.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But they're very
romantic. And now here's the
box.
box series, and this is something that occurred in you basically you stay in Florence.
Well, actually, it's more like Siena.
It's Siena. Okay.
It's outside. It's a small little town outside of Siena. And so this box series was kind of done over 3 visits in 2000, 2002, and 2004. And I found this old cookie tin. That's exactly what it is, and you're kind of looking. The camera is actually looking through the top of this box. And when I saw this box on the floor in this building, I immediately knew it was like kind of a room with a window, very simply, and that because I'd always struggled to kind of get light into that box the way I kind of wanted it. And this was sort of like, this was like doing, you know, a portrait next to a window. It was just sort of the perfect little chamber. And so in order not to get addicted to this box, because I really just love the way everything kind of looked in there, you know, it kind of just sort of, it just really kind of just focused in on the object. I mean, it really kind of gave you this sort of specimen sort of feeling, just really kind of looking at something. And so I left it in Italy, and then I go back and I do a few more, and da 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 da. But
someone was asking me the other day how you got the tomatoes into that configuration.
They're just stacked. I mean, they're not.
I mean, did you
They're
put
three tomatoes.
toothpicks, or
They're
there
three
toothpicks
tomatoes that are
holding them
kind of.
Are there toothpicks holding them in place?
No.
So it's just gravity?
No, I mean the octopus, for example. I mean that's draped over a glass.
Uh-huh. And that strange
So
looking cauliflower, is that what a cauliflower looks like?
That is a Roman cauliflower. It's called Cavolfiore di Roma. And I think it's a kind of a specialty cauliflower that's to the region, And I think, I mean now, I mean if you're in the markets in San Francisco and any other place that have really kind of developed, sort of,
you can find it.
It's starting to, even those tomatoes and the same thing. But to me, that was just like unbelievable. That was like the banana bunch, And the box kind of just had this great way of playing with the scale of things, with the mushrooms. And I mean, they were really big porcini mushrooms, and I mean, so everything is scaled the same, but somehow or another, each picture kind of plays against.
Alice through the looking glass
right,
kind of quality,
right, yeah.
And where was this shot?
This was in the same place in Siena, and it really was, this was kind of a reaction picture to kind of photographing in the box. This was sort of like, I'm going to kind of get out of the box, and I'm going to kind of do something.
And you still boxed in part of it.
I did, yeah. I got to cage something, But it really was about doing kind of it was like doing a tonal shift. I wanted to do a white, light image, and that was really the basis of. And I was, I was living in this apartment in Siena, and I was sort of, these things were kind of passing through my. This is sort of I mean, I'm eating this stuff, and and this was the kitchen table, and so you're constantly kind of, I'm constantly aware of how things are hitting it, at different times of the day or what have you, and so. That's done at the same time as doing some of those box images.
Well, and also, I mean, you're so meticulously, with great precision anyway, creating these compositions. Did you ever think, do you ever consciously think about the relationship between the way you're making these table arrangements and say, when you would, when you were working as a chef and preparing food and the whole issue of presentation?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think you can, I don't think I was specifically thinking about that, but I think there's definitely a connection to that. And, my interest in doing that, and I think even ceramics and stuff, I think it really is sort of a very kind of, it's just a hand-eye thing. It's a very kind of,
just getting it just right.
Yeah, and I think that there's, like I said, among like other things, there are lots and lots of trashy looking negatives of just really bad versions of this. I mean I think this is pretty good, but where you just kind of keep working at it, and that's just the way the camera is. It just keeps, it's very instant, and you make a change, and sometimes getting back to things is a little difficult. And like that durian fruit piece, it's like, that stuff rots, very quickly, and and you go back to get another durian fruit, and it's just not the same.
Right.
And it just, so you're kind of, you kind of just keep going, So I don't know.
Are these still in Italy? They have that look.
No, these are New Orleans.
These are in New Orleans.
These are in New Orleans,
so
and that's
Caravaggio kind of carried over.
Well, it is. It's kind of like the odd year, It's. I think I went to Italy more even years, and yeah, I mean that one, the Satsumas in Mariposa. It's just, I don't know. It's just so, it's so formal, in a traditional way, that. I hate to say it, but I kind of get a kick out of it because.
Now, had you moved into your new house at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So these were kind of the first pictures that I'd kind of photographed in this new house, and.
So you finally left the quarter.
Right, and
Did that affect your work at all?
um, I think I kind of had more access to, I think it was more access to, you know, uh, the light in this new house was fantastic. So, it kind of gave me access to that. Um, these pictures, I don't know. I just the one on the Satsuma Mariposa seems so formal and traditional, and the one on the left really seems to get into kind of more of a 20th century kind of quality. Which I have no kind of I don't set out to do either one of those
To
things in
feel
that
contemporary
respect.
versus historical?
Yeah, and so it's kind of after the fact that I kind of just kind of have that little kind of discussion with myself about like what is there, what is and suddenly it kind of leads me kind of it'll lead me to like Morandi, or
Morandi versus Caravaggio.
right, yeah, exactly.
Now these are a couple of non-food still lifes, but I wanted to show some of the other things that you've been doing, and these are from the same period. What are the objects? Where did you find them?
These are just things that I just kind of constantly am collecting, and
Do you go to flea
I'm attracted
markets
to
or antique stores?
Yeah, anything and everything, and it just kind of accumulates, and it's kind of all out there on the shelves, and it's kind of, and so it is kind of, there's situations where I've brought food into the house, and
When you're in say an antique store or a thrift store, is it like, oh, I think this would be interesting to photograph? And
yeah,
that's why
I thought that
you
those,
buy it?
there's
Do
another
you ever buy things that you don't want to
like
photograph?
those doll's eye. There's a pair of doll's eye that are behind that, that looking glass, and just because of the way it's positioned, you can't see the other eye, but yeah, it was just sort of like, oh, I've got to, work that into a photograph somehow, sometime, and I just wanted to kind of do a picture that sort of had all these sort of glass objects, and that was really just that was the driving force behind, doing that. And the one on the left is really kind of, that really to me is kind of more of that sort of formal Zubron, lining up those kind of little objects. Doesn't have that sort of dark background that maybe he had done, but.
Now, because I'm sure everybody wants to know, of course, your life, mine, a lot of lives were interrupted in a very big way in 2005 by Hurricane Katrina. So tell us, in a little bit, not a long detail, but a little bit kind of what happened in your case and how did that affect you in terms of your work as an artist?
Well, first of all, my house was, had kind of minor damage, just to start with. But I was up in the Northeast at the time, and I was flying back to New Orleans on the Thursday. I think Katrina hit like on a Monday morning, early Monday morning.
That's right, it was a Monday.
And I was flying back from Boston on Thursday evening. And people, as I was going to the airport, they're like saying, oh, Dave, there's a big storm coming to New Orleans. And I'm kind of very sort of, well, I'm out of here, I'm going back home, And so by the time I had gotten there, it was starting to,
Had
the
panic
talk,
set in yet?
Not yet, no. The talk was really kind of happening, and people were packing up, and I wasn't really doing anything. I kind of was sort of, I had one eye on it, but not really both eyes. And then, like, it was Saturday night, and I think it was Nagin, the mayor, had said, well, if you're not out of town by now, you're crazy, and that just got me really nervous. And so it was around, I think around midnight that I kind of packed up, and I went to Lafayette, which is about 2 hours west of New Orleans. And, I had a little pickup truck, so I just decided to leave everything. I wasn't going to, bother with loading up the truck. I didn't want to be on the highway.
Did you
broken down or
put
something.
up storm windows or do anything?
I hammered up some plywood and that sort of thing, and it was just kind of surreal. The whole thing was kind of weird, and then I went to Lafayette, and it was just kind of a typical sort of struggle with not knowing and what's going on and all that sort of business. And then Rita was coming through. And I mean, all I could think of was like, my parents would kill me, you know? I mean, here I am running around Louisiana, like, you know, avoiding hurricanes and stuff. So I leave Lafayette to go up to Monroe in the northern part of the state. And so Rita, you know, hits to the, like what, to the west of Lafayette, so it wasn't really that badly hit. But there were these huge bands of storms coming up to, and they were just coming right through Monroe, you know, and I'm like, oh God, you know, so here we go. But anyway, it just was sort of a, you know, I think that it was just sort of an exhausting, kind of a very sort of surreal time. I mean, getting back to the house and, you know, it just, you know, it's just kind of that sort of, you know, just very sad and very kind of unfortunate for the city. And then there's the whole bureaucratic thing kind of, you know, coming in where, you know, you did have damage on your house. And it's kind of like, well, what did you do for, you know, what did you do photographically for the next few years? It's like, well, I think I just kind of worked on my house, you know, because, you know, you had to kind of spend money to get money to kind of do this, to, you know, it's just this whole sort of insurance kind of mess. And you know, you know, that's a point where I would go down to the lower Ninth Ward. There was a whole Common Ground group that was sort of volunteering down there. And I have a whole sort of series of portraits.
You photographed?
Yeah, I have a whole, I mean, I photographed, you know, all on the Gulf Coast and all through New Orleans. And you know,
you haven't shown any of that?
No, none of that, no.
Do you intend to?
I do, there are things that I mean, for me, I don't, you know if they're, you know, I don't know whether I'm just sort of thinking whether they have aesthetic value or whether they have, you know, what kind of, I've kind of not figured that out. I mean,
Well, if you took them, they probably do.
Well, I don't know, but what the pictures that I do sort of, that I like are these portraits of all the Common Ground volunteers, done in that very formal way, because they were from all over the country, and just a really great, you know, group of people.
I think that should be your next show.
Maybe. But they were photographed in the lower Ninth Ward in what was called, I think they called it the Blue House.
So why don't we then just sort of see what you've been doing since Katrina.
Okay.
Starting with these portraits that you did a year or two after.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, just to say that I've always kind of done all these sort of things concurrently, doing the portraits and landscapes and still lifes. And I mean, it's always sort of been a kind of an overlapping kind of process, you know, being indoors and going outdoors and traveling and whatever. It just, you know, certain situations kind of, and, you know, these pictures were done at a point where I kind of felt I was sort of really more back settled in, you know, in the house again.
Normalcy had returned,
yeah, I mean,
to some extent.
And, you know, these were people that I really had wanted to photograph, do portraits of. And the gentleman on the right, Francis, he is my neighbor who lives behind me. And he is someone who owns, I don't know, you know, tons of properties in New Orleans. And you just wouldn't think he had a dime to his name, you know. He just.
But he does.
He does, yeah, you know, and he just shuffles around. And the woman on the left, her name is. She's actually a friend of mine, Jeanette Bone. She's from England. She's an architect. I had always wanted to do a portrait of her, and we had kind of picked out a few things for her to wear, and I told her to bring this fur wrap. As just, to me, it was a little bit too, I don't know, too contrived or something like that. But in the end, it became kind of the portrait that I loved the most. I mean, she looks like a, you know, she looks like a Depression era, you know, I don't know, portrait that, you know, these are the last of her jewels, or last of her, you know, her things. But, you know, they're just.
Well, maybe that's kind of an appropriate metaphor for post-Katrina, since she, like all of us, had been through such an ordeal.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to now look briefly at the color work, which is sort of the latest development in your work, and perhaps what came as a surprise, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think now I had photographed a lot, you know, a lot of color. Again, throughout the years. I mean, I have that durian photograph
In color?
In color.
But you've never,
I've never shown
it.
it, never
Yeah.
printed. I just never had the technical kind of ability to do it. I didn't, I never had any kind of color sort of training and, color printing or anything like that. But I sort of had always kind of thrown some color in it. And even in traveling, I have color pictures from Tonga and color pictures from Russia. And so anyway, I had, there's a particular photograph that is not in the show, but I just decided, I was setting something up at my house that I really did it just at one point while I was doing it, just say to myself that is, that it is so beautiful. I mean, the color was so beautiful that I did. I threw a roll of color in, and it was the first time that someone had scanned the roll of film and kind of printed out a very beautiful kind of 11 by 14 contact sheet on a very beautiful paper, and it was a pigment print. It was on an Epson printer, and it was this beautiful flat paper, and it was just everything I kind of saw in that photograph when I was taking it.
But to be clear, you were using traditional color film.
Oh, film, yeah, just regular film.
And so it was printed out with a scan.
Yeah, and I just sent it off to the lab to get, to get it developed, and this guy, his name's Cameron Wood, he scanned the film and just made me a beautiful contact sheet, and I was just, oh my God, and it's like, what, and that kind of started it, and it really was kind of a floodgate, because I even reshot a few things that I had shot the month or two before, like in color, because it just was sort of, it really was kind of an amazing thing. And, even just the color orange, I mean, in black and white, it just goes gray. It's sort of, it becomes this kind of murky mid-tone, little, just not as interesting to me, like even a red tomato just goes gray,
Right.
And so it kind of just had this whole different effect, it sort of, I mean, not that I was completely changing what I was, what types of food or objects I was photographing, but it really just kind of opened up a whole,
And so tell us how, before you do the final print, you're working on the computer now?
Right, it's, it's film, shot with a medium format camera. It's a Mamiya 6.7, and the negative is just a high resolution negative. And then basically kind of, and I work with someone because I'm not, I work with this guy Cameron who helps me sort of navigate through some of these. I mean, it's the same sort of choices that you're making kind of in a black and white darkroom.
But now you're looking at color.
Yeah.
With